On my now defunct podcast this year, I was doing a list of my top 6 of the year by quarter. So, all the new 2024 releases I played in the first quarter, I ranked those. Second quarter, ranked those. Well, we've just finished up the third quarter. Seeing as the podcast is now defunct, I figure let's go ahead and do it on the YouTube channel. So after the break, I'm going to recap the first quarter and the second quarter to bring you up to speed, and then we're going to jump into the third quarter. Alright, so I'll list here the first quarter games, and the reason I'm doing 6 is because a quarter of 24 is 6, so that's why I went with 6. So by the end of the year, I'll have 24 games, and then I'm going to rank those to get my best of the year. So for the first quarter, number 6 was Agueda, City of Umbrellas from 25th Century Games. This was one where you're going to be drafting umbrellas, filling up a board, trying to accomplish certain goals on the shops, and going until I believe your board's filled, or someone's board is filled, if I remember correctly. Really enjoyed the drafting mechanism. You're going to find that out throughout this list, is that we found this to be the year of the draft, where a ton of drafting games made our list. Then 5 was French Quarter, a roll and write. Again, you're kind of drafting dice to fill in your sheet. The newest one from Motor City Gameworks. And again, 25th Century Games. This was part of the loaded roll and writes that has French Quarter, Three Sisters, I think it was called Motor City, and Fleet the Dice Game. Number 4 was Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux. This was a new implementation of Shipwrights of the North Sea from Garfield Games, where they basically revamped the game, made it smoother and easier to play. And again, drafting games going back and forth over a set number of rounds, trying to build out your fleet and get the most points that way. Number 3 was Wormspan, a spiritual successor to Wingspan that had dragons, added a few more elements, added coins that allow you to take the turns as opposed to using the cubes, so forth and so on. I will say all of this stuff you can find coverage of on the channel for this quarter, the halfway third quarter. I'll do my best to list those as much as I can down below, or maybe I'll create a playlist. I'll decide by the time this video is posted. Number 2 was Stone Spine Architects. Again, a drafting game, this one from Thunderworks Games. We're going to be going back and forth with hands of cards, drafting them, building out your dungeon, trying to create a path from the beginning to the end, having monsters and different scoring mechanics that way. And then finally is Let's Go to Japan from AEG. This one was a passion project about doing a trip to Japan, and you'll be drafting cards to build out your itinerary, and then going across scoring points, hopefully meeting certain requirements to score those cards. As for the second quarter, we had number 6 was Camping Flux, a new version of Flux from Looney Labs. This one centered around camping. Number 5 was Cascadito, a roll and write that was kind of a re-implementation of Cascadero. This came to us from Bitewing Games, where you'll be rolling dice and then taking the dice and putting little hexes on a map, and you are crossing off the spots next to a city, and you're scoring the cities when you have a new connection to your network. Next up was Harmonies from Libellude. This one is, a lot of people are comparing it kind of like to a Cascadia meets Azul type of thing, where you're going to be grabbing these little discs and putting them on your board, trying to match landscapes to score cards and get animals out and so forth. 3 was Ezra and Nehemiah. I still don't know how to pronounce his name. I apologize. This is a bigger one, part of, I believe, was the Ancient Anthology series from Garfield Games. This one had a lot going on where you're playing cards. They're giving you banners to allow what action you're going to do, and you're doing a bunch of stuff on the map. It is a beast, but it is a fun beast. Number 2 is Isle of Night from Red Raven Games. This is a small boxed game. I do not believe Ryan Lockett designed this one, but did the art for it. This was a fun one of, again, drafting cards, building out this area in front of you. Each thing kind of scores differently, and you're going to be moving these cards around over here on this island. That's going to dictate how you are going to be scoring certain cards, and other cards are going to score with other ones. This is one that seemed to fly on the radar. I haven't heard much about it, but it is a fun small box game, but it does take up quite a bit of room because you start having these massive tableaus. And our number 1 for the second quarter was Metro Runner, a Thunderworks game where we had a cyberpunky theme to it. You're moving in a rondel, going around collecting cubes and trying to complete jobs, fulfill contracts, etc. Really great production, really awesome components, everything to it. Metro Runner. So, with that said, let's go ahead and get into this quarter's top 6. Alright, we are going to start off with number 6. This is probably one of the newest ones we have, and it made it on the list pretty quickly, and that is Pixies. Pixies is a card game where you're going to be dealing cards out in the middle. Each person is going to be taking one. You build a 3x3 grid. When you take a card, you're going to put it in its spot on the grid. If you take a card with that same number, you're going to look at the 2, keep one of them face up, flip the other one face down, which is going to validate it, which means it's going to score at the end of the round. If you then grab a third one by that, you're going to just flip that upside down and put it in one of the other spots, just not under a card you previously had. At the end of the round, you're going to be scoring your validated cards. You're going to be scoring the symbols that are on top. Swirls give you positive points, X's give you negative points, and then you're going to be scoring based on your largest contiguous group of a color. 2 points in round 1, 3 in round 2, and 4 in round 3. Most points after 3 rounds wins. I really love how portable and quick this is. The rules, they make sense. They're easy to retain, so even if you pick this up, week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, it's going to click back in. You're going to know how to play it. The artwork is fantastic. We really love small card games that we can just take with us anywhere, that we can bust out while we're making dinner, right before dinner when you don't have a ton of time per se. We just enjoy that card game where you can throw it on the table, deal it out, play it really quick while you're doing other things throughout the day. And just like that small little break, some people might use it as like their morning game, like a coffee game I've heard them called. Tea game where you get up before you start your day, you're kind of waking up, having your morning tea, all that, deal out the game. So Pixies, I find, is a really fun one because it doesn't require a ton of brain power, but enough to where it's not going to be mindless of just grabbing cards. You really do need to make your strategic choices of where and when you're going to be placing the cards down, trying to manipulate the probabilities, like there's not as many 9s as there are 5s. So do you validate that 9 spot hoping to get one? If not, it's wasted, so forth and so on. So there is still some strategic depth, even though it is a small box card game. So number 6, Pixies from Panasaurus Games. Number 5 is, again, a drafting game, and this drafting game is one that you're going to be drafting. You're going to be making marks on a sheet, putting troops out on a map, and that is Clans of Midgard from Gray Fox Games. So you're going to be having hands of cards, you're going to be choosing cards, pass them, then once everyone's drafted the cards, you're going to have your sheet, and you're going to be marking it down, the runes that you get, the tribes that you have supported. You're going to be putting your little troops on the map for which areas they pertain to. You're going to be having Valkyries that might help you in those battles. You're going to be choosing monsters that you're going to slay that's going to give you points. There's just straight points. As long as you've beaten your previous score, you get those points. So that is one of the things that we really liked about this one, is that there's so many different avenues and strategies to get points that you don't even stick with one through the whole game. We tend to find that like the first part of the game, we're focusing on getting those tribes and getting our troops on the map and getting points there, and then maybe some of the monsters or the middle get the points as much as possible. But then right around that 3rd or 4th round, because it plays over 4 rounds, those last couple of rounds, you start noticing, oh, my runes are almost full. Well, I need these specific runes. So now you're going to start just grabbing those specific runes. Then at the end of the hand, you're like, oh, wait, what tribe am I even supporting anymore? So I really like a game that plays only 4 rounds, but has that strategy switch in the middle of it. Or you could even try and do the strategy up front, knowing what cards are harder to get, grabbing those cards from the beginning, and then just flip-flopping the strategy on everyone, and you do the runes at the beginning, and then you have your free range at the end of whatever you want to grab because you know they're not paying attention to it. So just the amount of strategic depth in it, as I said, only 4 rounds. The one qualm I did have with it that I did cover in the review is I kind of wish the sheet or the cards were laid out better, because there is some weirdness where it's like, look at this part, and then this part, and then here, and then start going back and down. That is the one main issue I had with it, is I thought the card layout could have been a bit better. But overall, Really enjoyed Clans of Midgard. It's a draft and write and fight is I believe what they called, because you're drafting the cards, you're writing them on your sheet, and you're fighting on the map. And then the 2-player experience for this one, there is a dummy player, but that dummy player is only there to add troops to the map. You don't have to do any weird drafting. There's no like take a card, pass it here, then take their card, then move it around. It's literally you're both just passing, and then after we're going to put the troops on the map, you reveal their card and put their troops on the map, and then they basically fight for the territory control that way. So it is even a pleasant, cool 2-player experience in regards to that. So number 5 was Clans of Midgard from Gray Fox Games. Number 4 is one that's quite a bit different in regards to what you're used to us seeing doing on this channel, us talking about, us playing, us covering, and that number 4 is Altered, the TCG. So we are not big trading card gamers. Board games take up enough of our money. We can't really dive into a trading card game and buying multitudes of decks, but we did back this one on Kickstarter. It seemed really interesting. I liked that there was no combat, and that is one of the things that Bri is not a huge fan of. We've tried Lorcana, we've tried Star Wars, those ones. The kind of combat and the manipulating them there was one of the things that deterred her, because she is not huge on that strategic level of, well, we gotta get this out to attack this person, but then leave this back here to be able to grab this stuff. So with this one not being as combat focused, not as much like direct player interaction that way, more so building up your tableau, choosing which expedition, having more colors than theirs to move your people forward. That was more up her alley, and I will say it did work, because we have played more games of this than we did Lorcana and Star Wars combined. She is a huge fan of this one. I'm a huge fan of it. There's the multiple factions. Each faction kind of plays differently, so you can kind of choose the play style you want. You choose one color, so that helps focus it even more, because sometimes once you start kind of diluting your deck or having to go different ways, that is another thing that could hinder her, because then it's like, well, this card is going to help you this way, but this card is going to help you in a completely different way. Now, this one is, nope, these cards are going to push forward this strategy. So it's almost like a single strategy deck, as opposed to trying to build out kind of separate things that may intertwine in the future. Some of it, I mean, don't get me wrong, the cards do mix, like making sure you have this and this will help trigger that, but it's not like I'm going to use these cards over here to then trigger this action, and then when I get this one card, all these actions are going to feed into this. This one has a bit more, still has that synergy, but in a smaller, compact package, where it might only be a couple of cards to help get that, as opposed to trying to get, this huge epic combo thing going. On that, I know they are planning on supporting it. Really love the artwork. Really enjoy what they've done with this one is, like, you'll have a card, so you'll have that card, and then you'll have a rare version of the card that's going to possibly cost less or cost more, but then have better abilities, and so forth. And then there's a third version of it that is in a different faction, that sometimes they tweak the power, or sometimes that power is still there, because it does benefit this other color. And I really like the way that they implemented those cards that way. So that is Altered, the TCG, my number 4. Moving on, my number 3. My number 3 is going to be a worker placement game that's got large workers that you're going to be using what you get from them to put out cards, or maybe even the spots you put them out will get you cards. And that is Wondrous Creatures from Bad Comet Games. So, as I said, you have these large workers. The workers take up 2 hexes, and then whatever is bordering that worker is what you get. And those spots have 2 options. You can either use it to get the resource that you need to put out the creatures, or each creature is assigned to a biome. So when you go there, you can instead take from the wilderness a creature of that biome to your hand to be able to play at a later time. When you play these cards, they can have possibility abilities of either an instant ability that gives you points, more resources, triggers something, so forth and so on. There's a wide range of those. There is a refresh action, because once all of your workers are on the board and you want to bring them back, you do a refresh action. So that's when you trigger those. Some of them get energy put on it, and then as a free action, you can discard that energy to do stuff, and some of those are really powerful, so they don't have as much energy. Some get a lot of energy because the thing is not as powerful. There is some that have an always in effect ability, like when you play this card, you get to do this, or when these cards cost less, or so forth and so on. And then there's end game scoring cards that are obviously going to score at the end of the game based on certain conditions that they're hoping for you to meet or have a plethora of. As you're doing all this, there's going to be achievements on the board that one of your actions could be to attain one of these achievements. It might be have so many eggs, or have so many from a biome, or have so many of these types of creatures, so forth. When you do that, you're going to grab a trophy, but then you're going to grab an achievement marker off of your board, put it there, and that achievement marker is going to trigger an ability. One of the main things I really like about this game is that you have the large workers, so you're able to trigger quite a few things with that one worker, and then when you trigger it, you have that decision space now of, do I get the resources I need now, or do I grab that card that matches that biome because it may be going away soon. So being able to use that worker for not only multiple spaces, but those spaces have their different abilities. The ability that when you do your action of playing a card, most games just let you play one, this lets you play two, and sometimes those can trigger. Like there are certain cards that when you play them, allow you to play another card from the row. And then there are even cards that let you like re-trigger that last instant play card, or that reference that last instant play card, so even the cards you play could be used again. Those energy cards, like some of them are really powerful. One of them is like discard energy to play a refresh card for free, but it's only got one energy. So now you have to try and do different actions that will help you recharge that card if you want to keep using it. So it is a powerful card, but it is going to take some upkeep if you want to keep using it, while some of the other ones not as powerful but have more energy, so you can use them more. What I didn't mention is each person also has a captain that has a special ability, and the special ability happens when you do the achievement. So sometimes you're going to rush to get an achievement even if it's not a lot of points, so you can unlock that ability, because some of the abilities are super awesome. Like one is, they just basically attract eggs. You put them down, you can just grab an egg. One of them is you can go on mountains for free, which is nice because those mountain spots sometimes have a lot of good stuff around them. So that is why my number 3 is Wondrous Creatures from Bad Comet Games. Our number 2 game is a game that utilizes a mechanic that is similar to what got us super interested in Garfield games of Raiders of the North Sea, and that's putting out a worker and taking a worker back and triggering stuff. And that game is Forges of Ravenshire from BA Games. In this one, you're going to have 3 dice. You're going to put a die out, getting resources or triggering an ability or getting an ability tile based on what number you put out there. And then you're going to be taking a different die back, again, triggering that spot to possibly get the resources and such. However, when you bring it back, now the color matters because the color is going to go on your board in one of 3 areas, which is going to trigger a line of actions that you have hopefully built up. Each one starts with 1, but you can be buying more tiles to put in there to start triggering stuff. That is only the first part of the game. The second part of the game is after everyone has put out a die and taken a die and ran their engines down here, you are now going to go into the forging phase. You're going to be having equipment, either weapon, armor, or shield, if I remember correctly. And then you are going to be taking your dice, putting them over here into your forge, making steel, using the wood and so forth to then craft these items, put them out to get points and coins and various sundries such as those. You're going to be able to purchase upgrades and such to make your kiln and all your stuff over here be better. You can unlock more spots on your engine. You have a trade market. There is quite a bit going on in here. This is one I definitely would suggest if you want to go and take a look at my how to play for it to really get a good feel of the game. It's really hard to explain briefly. Basically, it's put out a die, take a die, get some stuff, use that stuff to make some stuff to get coins, which are points at the end of the game, trying to get the most after 4 seasons. So, what I like about this game is everything I just briefly described. I love the dice. The dice look cool. The production quality is fantastic. This is an optimization puzzle of putting your dice out and trying to get the resources and being able to utilize them the best over here to try and accomplish as many forgings as you can, because there's also going to be like achievement cards out here that want a specific number of items. And at the beginning, it's one of those games where you're going to be looking, you're like, I need 4 of those and 6 of those. How am I even going to get there? I'm only able to do 1. No, because once you get it moving up and going quicker, you're going to be doing like 2, possibly 3 if you go with the lower grade ones to be able to put over here. There's also these I don't know if they're called mystics, but they're basically these special charms that are going to help you score more coins or use it to kind of better the finish on the cards, and that will be some of those achievements as well. So there is a lot of stuff going on here, but it flows well. Like it's, put this out, bring this back, run this down. Then at the end, you're putting it over here and triggering all this to make as much resources as you can so you can get those built. But you want to do this the best as possible. And then after the base game, they did put it in where you can have some helpers that kind of give you some bonuses. Like one is you start with everything upgraded and unlocked. There's one that lets you have a secret contract and etc. So yes, this one, I will say this one and my number 1 were neck and neck. Any given day I may interchange them, but this is one that I definitely did enjoy. Just as I said, putting out the dice, collecting the things, making the things. It's one of the few games from this year that's not a drafting game, but it is like one of my favorite from the year. Obviously not my favorite so far, especially even of this quarter, as we have number 1 left after number 2, Forges of Ravenshire BA Games. So speaking of that number 1, I went around and around and around and around with these two, Forges of Ravenshire and my number 1. But I think number 1 I liked more because of the amount of chaining actions in it. And if you didn't figure it out from the around and around and around comment, my number 1 is Windmill Valley from Board and Dice. This one has a lot of stuff I love. Great components, awesome player boards, a massive center board, cards that you can buy for special abilities, the ability to put out these windmills, which then trigger like 3 other actions. Building out your little spinning wheel so you can do 1 action here, 1 action here, and each of those actions might trigger a bunch of other actions. I'm not going to get in depth in this one because like Forges of Ravenshire, it's hard to do a brief description of, but I do have the unboxing and how to play. Again, I'll link it somehow, some way down below. But just know you're going to have these spinning wheels, you're going to turn them, you're going to be taking an action, that action may trigger into other actions, but you're basically trying to collect tulips to fill up your board to score points there. You're going to be scoring points based on your windmills being out, and those are going to increase the value of your tulips, etc. There is, as I said, just so much going on in this game, even though a lot of people say this is, like, oh, well, it's kind of like a mid to lightweight. This is a little bit heavier if you make it that way. I have a tendency to really build up my wheel that's really going to trigger all these actions and maneuver stuff around. And, all right, now I can do this and put this here, and now that's going to let me do a market action. The market action triggered this card. That is now going to let me plant, and when I plant it, I can now get an enhancement tile. Whew. So that is why I'm saying that it can be a medium weight. Whereas Bri didn't really build out her wheels that much, so she's not triggering as much, so it didn't seem as heavy to her. But with me doing all my triggering and maneuvering around and all that, it did feel heavier for me personally. Like I said, and that's what sold it on me as my number 1 for now, is the fact that you can combo. Forges doesn't have that comboing. It's got that optimization puzzle. This is an optimization puzzle in a whole different way of you only have so many actions you're going to be able to take, so you better make them count. So how are you going to line them up in order to trigger more things and chain more stuff together so you can optimally do more stuff? I will say with this one, we do play a long game of it because you can be adjusting the water level. That makes the wheel spin more or further, and then what happens is once the wheels have gone around 4 times, the game end basically is triggered. So we do it where we're basically spinning them only once each time, so we are doing a lot more actions than people probably do or the game was really designed for. And so my opinion of that being my number 1 is based off of that. I did play it solo, and the solo did really kind of push forward the game, and it wasn't as enjoyable for me. So I think if we played one where we were really pushing the end game and only focusing on one thing and going that way, I don't know if it'd rank as high. But the way we personally play it is the way I enjoy it. So that is my number 1 of the third quarter of 2024. I will include the full list at the end so you can take a gander at that. And as you saw earlier, I covered my first quarter and second quarter. There is one quarter left, the fourth quarter, which will be coming out near the end of the year, followed by my top of 2024. If you want to be alerted when those come out, or maybe even as I am playing games that may appear on that list, you can go ahead and head down below and hit like, subscribe, comment, share, and ring the bell to let people know about all these great games that have come out in just these past 3 months. While you're down there, you can also help support the channel with our Ko-fi, where you can buy a drink, and then maybe we can toast your favorite game of the third quarter of 2024, which you could leave in the comments down below, and we will go cheers to that. Alrighty, so until next time, next quarter, please.